The cabin buzzed with the usual chatter of travelers, but in an instant, silence swept through the rows. A young black woman, calm and poised, walked toward her assigned seat, unaware of the storm about to unfold. Before she could sit, a white passenger slid into her place, dismissing her with a smirk that carried more than arrogance, it carried entitlement. What seemed like a simple disagreement over a seat soon spiraled into a confrontation that would shake everyone on board. But no one, not even the flight crew, could have imagined who this woman truly was, or how her quiet strength would bring the entire flight to a standstill. The hum of the airplane was steady, the kind of low vibration that usually lulled passengers into comfort, but for her it was just background noise. She had boarded quietly, not drawing attention to herself despite the aura she carried. Her attire was simple, elegant, but understated, chosen deliberately to avoid the stares that often followed her wherever she went. She reached her assigned seat, eyes scanning the row, only to find it already occupied. The man sitting there looked up with an air of defiance, a small smirk pulling at the corner of his lips as though daring her to challenge him. She paused for a moment, almost giving him the benefit of the doubt, then politely said that the seat belonged to her. He chuckled, dismissive, shaking his head as if she was mistaken. But she wasn't. The number was clearly printed on her ticket, and she had no doubt where she was supposed to be. What unsettled her wasn't just his refusal, but the way his eyes lingered on her skin, on her presence, as though he had already decided she didn't deserve to be there. Passengers nearby noticed the tension. Some turned away, unwilling to get involved, while others leaned closer, curiosity piqued. The flight attendant approached, her professional smile faltering when she realized the nature of the dispute. She asked to see their tickets. The young woman handed hers over calmly, her voice steady though her chest tightened. The man waved his dismissively, muttering something about wanting more legroom and how it shouldn't matter who sat where. The attendant reminded him that passengers were assigned seats for safety and order, but he refused, crossing his arms like a child throwing a tantrum. A few people chuckled under their breath, others whispered, but she stood there, her dignity intact, saying little. The flight attendant urged him again, but he leaned back, arrogance radiating, as though the very idea of moving for her was beneath him. What no one around them knew was who she truly was. To them she appeared to be just another passenger, perhaps even someone too timid to fight back. But beneath her quiet exterior was a woman whose name carried weight across boardrooms, whose influence reached far beyond this cramped cabin. She could have spoken then, revealed the truth, ended the dispute instantly with the power of her identity. But she didn't. Instead, she allowed the silence to stretch, testing the patience of those around her, testing the values of fairness, respect, and humanity. Minutes ticked by, the air thick with unease. The crew tried again to resolve the matter, their voices firmer this time, but the man remained stubborn, claiming he wouldn't be moved by some girl. That phrase struck her, not because it belittled her wealth or position, but because it stripped her down to something lesser in his eyes. Yet even then, she didn't raise her voice. Her calmness was louder than any argument could be. And then, in a turn no one expected, the pilot was called. A murmur spread through the cabin as the aircraft's momentum paused, the threat of grounding suddenly real. What had begun as a simple act of arrogance was unraveling into a scene that would bring the entire flight to a standstill, leaving everyone to wonder who this woman truly was and why her quiet strength commanded such authority. The silence that lingered after the confrontation was more powerful than any outburst could have been. She didn't raise her voice, didn't allow frustration to spill over, and that very calmness unsettled everyone watching. The man who had taken her seat expected resistance, perhaps anger, something he could use to paint her as unreasonable. But instead, she stood steady, her expression composed, her voice level, and the absence of anger spoke louder than shouts ever could. It was as though her silence placed a mirror before the cabin, forcing each passenger to confront what they were really witnessing. Some avoided her eyes, ashamed that they hadn't spoken up. Others shifted uncomfortably, realizing that their silence was a kind of complicity. The crew tried to smooth things over, but the man remained rooted, his entitlement hardening with every passing second. He made jokes under his breath, loud enough for those around him to hear, jokes that revealed a subtle but cutting prejudice. At first, a few chuckled nervously, but gradually the laughter died. It was impossible to ignore the sharp contrast between him and the woman standing quietly by the aisle. She exuded an elegance that could not be dimmed, an aura that seemed to grow stronger the longer she remained unshaken. Her presence became a lesson in restraint, in power that didn't need to announce itself. She could have revealed her wealth, her position, and silenced him instantly. But she chose not to, and that choice spoke volumes. To some, it seemed almost saintly that she endured the insult without retaliation. To others, it was intimidating, the way she remained unbothered, as though she was in control of a game no one else realized was being played. Slowly, the tide of opinion within the cabin shifted. The man who once seemed amusing in his arrogance began to appear childish, pathetic even, while the woman he tried to belittle rose in quiet strength before their eyes. The crew's patience was thinning, and whispers spread along the rows. Questions grew louder. Why wouldn't he move? Why was she being made to wait? The injustice became harder to ignore. It wasn't just about a seat anymore. It was about dignity, respect, and the uncomfortable reality that prejudice still found a way to manifest even in something as routine as boarding a flight. Each passenger had to face their own conscience, and though many said nothing, their eyes betrayed a growing sympathy for the woman whose composure never faltered. By the time the captain was summoned, the cabin had transformed into a theater of tension, every passenger caught between outrage and anticipation. And while the man still sat stubbornly, refusing to budge, the woman's silence continued to resonate. She had turned the entire flight into witnesses, not of a petty disagreement, but of something deeper, the stark difference between arrogance and dignity, between entitlement and true power.